Here we are. Welcome everybody to Build It Through Culture Live. I'm Rob Genovese. I'm here with Steph Bellafato, and we're going to be talking about culture. And name that tune if you are in the audience with us yet. First one to names it gets no prize, but praise from us.
Hey,
The
Mary
song and the artist.
Ellen, Justin.
Hey Justin, welcome.
Mary
Good to
Ellen's
have you guys here.
Yeah.
As you can see, we are going to be talking about the core values today. But first, what I want to do is I just want to introduce myself. And okay, if you still got a couple seconds here, I'm going to cut the music, but tell us who the artist and the song name is. Okay,
Well,
give you a little bit more.
I can't hear it, so
Can't hear it?
maybe the audience can't hear it either.
Oh, okay. We'll
So
get that figured out for later.
Yeah, we'll have to
We'll get
do
that
it
figured out for
again.
later. All right, so you don't get a song this week, this session. You'll get one next time, so don't worry about it.
No, well, I bet you could probably figure it out, Rob.
I'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, you'll figure it out. Maybe within this next hour, we'll figure it out.
Absolutely. So I am Rob Genovese, and if you don't know me, my company is Unleash My Beast Brand. We're a branding and design company. I'm also area director for Master Networks and also regional advisor on culture. And this is my partner, Steph, here.
Hi,
Hey,
everybody. I'm Stephanie Bellafato, and I am the president of the Carmel Wednesday evening 5 o'clock meeting, as well as Rob's partner in the region on culture, as well as on the national culture team with the beautiful Miss Tina Campbell and Rob as well. And I represent Serpro. We're a fire, water, mold, biohazard remediation company. So any kind of cleanup you don't want to clean up, we can handle that for you.
Awesome.
Welcome, everybody.
We want to welcome everybody here. This is the second episode of Build It Through Culture Live. And what we're going to be doing is part of this format is we're going to be going through the core values. And I've adopted the core values from Master Networks because they happen to be really good, solid values. I had my own before this, but I kind of like these better because they really get to the basics of what a person can do to conduct themselves in order to create a great culture. And those core values, and I can just run through them real quick here, but those core values, if you know them, actually, let's play a little game.
Yeah, I love
name them.
Yeah, put in the chat if you can name some of the core values of Master Networks or all of them, but one at a time, put them in the chat. We would love that. Gives us great feedback as to who's paying attention in our meetings, right?
And no cheating, no looking it up either.
Yeah, don't look it up. Ooh, Sammy, relationships. That's right. Ooh.
Erin Todd connection. Close.
That's part of relationships is connecting. Improvement, Rachel.
Rachel, improvement. Very good, Rachel. We know Rachel would get it.
I know, of course, right? That's right.
The New York region says relationships. Yeah. So that's the first one.
Yeah.
All right. So I wish I had a bell because we go relationships. That's the first one. And look, if you were here last episode, then you got a heads up because this is what we covered in the last episode was relationships, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and the importance of them, right? The importance of how important the relationship is for you in your personal life and in your professional life, right?
Yeah, I mean, and we were, and this had to come up sooner or later, but we were in the workshop today with Chaz Wilson as he talked about relationships and how he coined this phrase, you're one relationship away from changing your future. And he said something really cool in there. I'm sure you caught it. He said, everything of value, anything you value in your life came out of a relationship first.
Yes.
I had to think about that. I was like, really? Like my kids? I'm like, oh yeah. One primary relationship.
Right, exactly.
Exactly. And have to meet my kids.
Right. And it was, if for those of you that may have missed it, you missed an amazing, amazing workshop. What an inspiring, truly inspiring workshop. Yeah. I can't, the fact that Chaz shared.
The fact that you're at a loss for words, right?
Yeah.
It was pretty moving. Some of the
it really
stories he
was.
told.
Yes.
That came out of relationships and things that resulted was pretty moving. So it wasn't just a seminar on bond, like, oh, here's how you talk to somebody, right?
Right.
He talked a
Right.
little bit about that, but it was that deeper stuff, which we love to get into, that was more on point with here's what relationships can mean in your life.
And how that relationship can change, right? Change your life,
Yeah,
change your trajectory. Um,
yeah.
but it was amazing. Hello,
Hey, Alban,
Elvan.
welcome. He's
Hello,
here.
hello. And look at all these.
Marilyn says she missed it.
Look,
Maybe there's a recording, Mary Ellen. Maybe
yes,
you can catch it.
yes, it was recorded. So I bet you can catch it on the New York, Connecticut Master Networks page, or the YouTube. But I
Yeah.
love to see, look at all these comments about the core values, accountability, contribution, results. Um, just great.
Th- Yeah. Did somebody say all of them? Did we get all of them in there? I think we got
I
all of them
think we
from
got all of them in
everybody.
there. Yep.
All right. I wanted to see if one person knew all of them, but they're just putting one at a time in
Well,
there.
I
So okay,
asked them
we'll
to
take.
put one at a time.
Oh, you asked them to put one?
I did ask them to put one at a time. And Sammy is saying Chaz Wilson is such a great speaker. He truly connects to the audience through his thoughtful choice of words. That's so true.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And if
Oh,
you haven't got a chance to see him or hear him, most people don't know him. They think, I was the CEO of the Master Networks company, right?
right.
But he's just a human being like the
He's
rest of us.
just right. He's just a nice guy, right? And look, before I forget, because I forgot on our last episode, I want to shout out Sammy Sunshine Vecchiola for making me this amazing mug, which is a phrase I always say, right? We don't just do business together, we do life together. And I didn't want to forget that to shout her out for that because I love this mug.
And you always say that, right? That's kind of the phrase you've coined. And it really is true. And to some people, they think like it sounds a little like yucky or
Or too
something
foofy, right?
too
Like it's
fruit. Yeah,
too
it's like fruit. It's
foofy.
like real. I
Right.
get the warm fuzzies. It's true. It's true.
But it is
And
true.
but
For
that's the
those of you that
benefit
know
of the
me,
relationship,
I
right?
keep it
It's
real, right? Like I keep it real. I'm one of those people, whether you like it or you don't like it, I do keep it real.
oh,
Um,
absolutely.
so
So we got improvement here. And my wife, Erin Tar says improvement. We got them all over the place. Marilyn says
oh look,
results,
Rachel says we follow directions
accountability.
because I said put one in at a time. Rachel says we follow directions.
I
I
wasn't
love
even
it.
listening. I wasn't even listening. Yeah, but so last episode, we talked about relationships, and
Yeah.
that we filled a full hour. And honestly, we could go on for hours about it, but that's what we talked about in the last session, and that's the first core value. But we are going to move on today to the next core value. Who knows what the second one is? All right,
Yeah, the
here's the good
second.
one. So in order, what is the second one?
So
Who
all
knows
of
what
you
the
put it
second
in the
one is?
chat. What's the second core value?
Yeah,
What's
and
what's the Master Network second core value? Put it in the chat. Let's see who gets to it first. Ooh. No
Rachel.
surprise there, Miss Rachel Sirota.
I know. No surprise. She knows him. Erin, she came in right after Rachel. Got to give
Yep,
Erin some
yep.
love there. Improvement. So good. So that's what we're going to talk about. So today it is about improvement, and this is an interesting one because I don't really think that people think about what improvement is. In fact, I don't think they really think about what these really are it practically in their life. So what is improvement? What home improvement? I
Right,
watched that
right.
TV show, or is it do I improve my home? What do we improve?
Yeah,
So
what are
where does
you
it start?
improving upon? Is it personally, professionally? Like, listen, I'm trying to improve my eating habits, right? So that's something I'm working on for improvement for my overall health. And in doing that, it'll improve for me in business too, right? Because if I have more focus, that's only going to help, right? So, and it's going to improve
Yeah,
the quality of my life,
yeah.
right?
Mary Ellen said it, our lives. But
Yeah,
where is
there you
oh, so where does that start? Where does it really start? it starts with the self, yes.
Yep.
But Tina corrected me not too long ago, Tina Campbell, and I kept saying, improvement, 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 and she goes, no, no, it's constant
Constant
improvement.
improvement.
Constant improvement. And I
Yep.
was like, oh yeah, because oh, I improved once. I
Right.
did it 5 years ago. I improved. I'm a much better me now, but I haven't,
Right.
done anything to improve myself since then, which means, I'm on the downside.
Well, you know what? Come to think of it, now that you just said that, just like when you said home improvement, right? If we don't constantly upkeep our home, you can visually see, right? What happens to your home when you're not constantly making sure to do the proper maintenance and upkeep in your home.
Value goes down,
And what happens to your home? Like
falls
not
apart.
yeah, it falls apart. So then
Yeah,
what happens to you in your life if you're not trying to constantly improve?
falls
That's
apart. I guess
and sometimes, right?
falls apart.
It
Yeah.
could. So,
So
food for thought.
improvement implies that something has to change. And now that word right there, and I apologize because you couldn't hear this song because I got to figure out this tech thing. People think I understand tech. I don't really understand tech. But the song that was coming through, it was Changes by David Bowie. And we talk about change. Now, people hate this word, right? Because it makes them feel like there's something wrong with me. I got to change.
Well, or it's uncomfortable, right? It's scary.
It's scary. People don't like change.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember when I was a younger guy. I remember when I was in my 20s, I wished I tried so hard to make sure things didn't change. If I could just keep things the same, then I wouldn't have to learn new things. Or I mean, can you imagine? I can't imagine that version of me that was real so long ago. Was I didn't want things to change because once I got it down, and then it changed. Well, I got to learn something new. I got to figure something else out. So that was hard. But what I did realize, what I did have going for me, I didn't have much going for me, but I had this one thing. I
Oh, I
realized
don't
I
believe
could
that.
change.
I
Oh, if
don't
you
believe
knew,
that.
you got to
Listen,
check with my wife. Ask her how it was when she met me.
you know what
Man, I
though?
lucked out that day. She said yes. I'll tell you that.
Well, you know what? I have to agree. You did luck out that day because I love me some Anne, right? There she goes. Changes. That's right.
There you go. Oh,
Um,
Master Networks. It's not New York region. It's Tina. Just clarifying.
hey, Tina.
Chaz, hey, thanks for coming, Chaz. He's thanking
Yeah.
Sammy for something.
Thanks.
I'm not sure
Thanks,
what. And for
Chaz.
everything.
Thank you for today. Thank you for sharing with us and being vulnerable. And it really touched us all, the stories that you shared, most especially the one about your son to me. That really, Rob and I were talking later on this afternoon, and it's like, listen, your legacy should be how you touch someone's heart, right? That's the long lasting legacy anyway, right? Like
Yeah,
you could leave a lot of things, but it's the impression that you make in someone's heart that's the lasting legacy.
it's the only thing that lasts beyond somebody's life. It's how they made us feel while they were around, right? Is what we take with us. And then what do we do with that? Because once you're given something, it has no value until you give it away. I think
Right,
people get that,
right.
right?
And you and I talked about that this afternoon too, right? Like,
Yeah,
if somebody teaches you something, the best way to honor that person is to share that with as many people as you possibly can. Teach that to as many people that could benefit from that as you possibly can. That's
absolutely.
so super important.
And I know that you're going to be asking a question of the our audience pretty soon. So anytime you want to do that, just jump in
Yeah, I
there. But
was
I just
just
want
gonna say, and speaking of that,
to, speaking
um,
of that, this is
Rach,
Rachel says the most dangerous phrase is this is how we've always done it, right? Because people don't
yeah,
want to change things. Well, it's an excuse, really. well, I don't want to do any extra work to change how we're
Well,
doing it.
because it's
I'm
kind of
used to
good
this.
the way it is, right? It's if it's good enough the way it is. Well, come on, we can always improve, right? We can look. None of us are perfect. We're human. None of us are infallible. We make mistakes. It's how you react to those mistakes and how you try to constantly be sure that you don't repeat it, right? We don't want to
Yeah.
it, then it's not a mistake anymore if you continuously repeat it, right? So
I
tonight's
you know
question, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I remember I had this job one time and I worked for a tyrant of a person, and I'm not even just overstating for dramatic effect. The woman was pure evil. She was. She would, if you made a mistake, you were just about getting fired. And I'm talking about a mistake that was so innocuous, so small, it didn't have any effect on anything. Because the fact that you thought on your own and you made a mistake. Now, some people are afraid of mistakes because, sometimes you're punished for your mistakes. And I learned the opposite is really the truth from mentors of mine that if you want to succeed, you need to make as many mistakes
As you
as you're
can.
gonna make.
Right.
Don't make mistakes on purpose, but
Right,
you're
right,
gonna make them, just make them, learn from them, and move on,
right.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? When you if you worked for someone like that, how productive, honestly, Rob, how productive when she treated you that way? How could you possibly be productive?
It
Right? There
wasn't.
because now you're all tense and you're thinking, oh no, I can't do this again because what is she gonna do next time? Right? It's
So
like,
what happened? What did I do? Only what I was expected to do and nothing more.
see,
So I
and
just
how
became like this
sad.
robot soldier.
And I so know a different Rob, right? It's like, you're like the giving Rob that like, oh, it's not just what's expected. It's like, oh no, what more can we do? How can we help more, right? You and I
Yeah.
talk about this. What can we do to help more?
Well, I had to learn that, by the way. So we're talking about improvement. We're talking about constant improvement. So we're talking about learning and getting better. And when I say I was a mess, I'm not understating it. I'm really not. I didn't really have any skills. Outside, I was taught graphic design in school, but I didn't really have any relationship skills, or leadership skills, team building skills, no kind of management, no skills. But since I knew I could change, I started on a journey of improvement, of self improvement, of constant self improvement. Started in my mid 20s, and it started with, what was it? It was a book my brother gave me. My brother was in sales, and he gives me a book, and I was just intrigued by the guy's name on the cover. I go, "Who's Zig Ziglar?" He goes, "Oh, you
Oh.
don't know who Zig Ziglar is?" I was like, "No, but what a weird name." I was like, actually, I think I was a teenager when I first saw that book, but it took a while. And it was called "See You at the Top." And as kind of a serial loser, I don't mean like I'm calling myself a bad name. I was
Okay.
losing. Okay, let's just be
Okay.
clear. I was
Yeah,
not winning.
please.
I was
I was
losing. So,
okay. Because I was gonna
so I
have to
thought,
like, slap you through the screen
thank you.
and say, no, no, no. We don't talk to ourselves or each other
No,
that way.
and seriously, I know I'm not calling myself, but that's what I was doing. I was not winning. But see you at the top, I'm like, can I really get to the top? Can I win? And I read that book, and it it made me go, wait a minute, books like this exist. Like somebody can teach me, and that set me on that constant improvement journey.
And sometimes I feel like our kids are our biggest teachers,
Sometimes,
right?
yeah, because they keep it real.
And because they're just so innocent. The younger they are, the more innocent they are. My son and I were going for a walk today, and you know, I got to be mindful of my back, right? So there's certain things I
Mhm.
have to be mindful of. And he's like, "Come on, ma, we could do this. Keep walking." And all around me, I am surrounded by these so steep hills, right? And he's like, "Let's walk this hill." And I said, "Oh, Dylan, I don't know if I can do it." He's like, "You could do it, mom. This is nothing. You got this." And I was like, "Well, I'm not going to tell you no, for sure, right? Because then what example am I setting?" So,
Yeah.
and he's like, I said, I'll walk in, I'll walk up this hill. I'll push myself as far as I can until I feel pain. Once I feel pain, though, then, and he's like, I'm with you. I got up the hill and we did this double high five. And he's like, you did it. You did it. So, constantly pushing a little bit farther and a little bit farther. So, to spin that now, I want to ask our audience, what are you doing for constant improvement? Are you reading a good book or an audible? Are you watching a video series? Are you doing some kind of coaching? Are you on Master Networks University where you have all this amazing information? Whatever you're doing, put it in the chat. Let Rob and I know. And because we want to learn from you guys as well. This isn't just about us. This is about you.
Yeah. And I appreciate some of the kind words you say about me, and other people do too. And I'm humbled by that. And I always, when people say that, I always think back. And some people, like, they wonder how I've learned this stuff or where I picked it up. And I'm going to tell you, they'll say, what books have you read? And I'll go, what books have I read? If I told you what I read, so in a 15-year period of time, I know for a fact I read over 400 books. I know for a fact, because I was that much of a mess where I had to change. So countless books, at the times, audio cassettes, and then CDs, and then digital downloads.
There you go.
Right? Audio books in the car, seminars, lots of seminars. I went to a lot of seminars. People don't do that much anymore.
Yeah.
That I know. They don't go to a lot of seminars. Now we're doing them on Zoom, so they're a lot easier. So I do see more of it. And, that kind of branches over. We talked about Chaz's workshop today, and that, it was a workshop, a seminar, whatever you want to call it, but that was a place to gain some improvement.
That's right. And if you were listening to what Chaz said, he said, instead of, making a list of 40 books, pick 5 to 8 books that you've read, right? And reread them and continue to reread them, right? Because it's true, like, depending on where you are in your life, when you're reading a book, there are parts that resonate more with you in that moment than in other times, right? So it's like you get this whole new perspective when you reread something that you've already read, because it's a different time in your life. You're at a different stage in your life. So maybe you're taking the pieces that you now need to improve versus what you might have needed a year or 2 years ago when you read the book, right?
That is really profound, because, I don't know anybody. Like, so you just said, Chaz had said it. And I remember reading How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie 5 times. Master Key to Riches, at least 5 times, half a dozen times. Some of these staple books, I've read many, many times, highlighting, making notes. And just as you said, I would go back and read the same book like 2 years later. And I would go, what? This wasn't in the first time I read it. I've never read this before. It'd be like this new concept. But the person that you are at the time you read it, when you come back later after a self-improvement regimen, you're a different person. You're going to get something different out of that same book.
Right. And it's really cool when you've read it in the past and you highlight, right? Like, so sometimes when I read now, I highlight in different colors so that, I know when I thought that was relevant to me. Right.
Look at this. Look at what Chris Januski said. You never read the same book twice.
So true.
People are going to misread that, and they're going to think he's saying don't read the same book twice. He's saying you never read the same book twice, because the second time you read it, you get something. You see something different. Yeah, good one, Chris. Thank you. And then Chaz here. Number 1, asking my leadership team how I can improve. That's one way he improves, is how can I improve? So he's seeking that feedback. And 2, but I read, so in a 15-year period of time, I know listening to coaches and mentors. So, so here we have different ways that we're constantly improving: coaches, mentors, reading, listening,
But wait, you know what? Before, no, put that, if you wouldn't mind putting that back up.
Mhm.
Chaz's number one says, asking my leadership team how I can improve. I do that in my leadership meetings, but better yet, I do that. I've done that with my children, and I've asked my
Mm.
kids that question. Am I giving you everything you need? Not material things, of course, right? But support, emotional support, and the things that you need to thrive. Am I giving that to you?
Mm.
Or is there some place I can do better? And, that can be a really scary question to ask, but it's an
Of your
honest question.
kids?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
you know what? It's probably one of the best questions I've asked because I don't know unless they bring it to my attention where my shortcoming is,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, well,
Where I
you've
can
gotta
do
have the
better.
humility first to do that. So you have the humility that allows you to open up to somebody younger, your children, right? You're supposed to know everything as the parent. I'll teach you. That's nonsense. So there's a humility in knowing that there's somebody with a different perspective, and you don't always know how you're coming across. So
Right.
there's this self-awareness that has to happen that enables you to really let the book, let the teaching, let the person, the coach, talk so that the message goes in. If you don't let it go in, because you need to hear something. And here's one thing too. I've heard people say, all the books say the same thing. It's all the same, positive mumbo jumbo. And I go, well, you have to come from a place where you're willing to look for the thing you need right now.
Right. In order to
Everybody
help
needs something
you.
now
Right.
to help you.
To help
To
you.
help you.
It's to help you. And look, you can say this to your children and say, I love you so much, but I need to know I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. And you didn't come with a handbook, right? There was no directions. It was, here's this beautiful child, do the best you can, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I
So let's think about this for a second. Let's look at categories of improvement because I think this could be very important as people go, well, what do I read? What do I need? I need so much because that was part of my challenge was I need everything because I'm so, not who I need to be in order to succeed in life and in business, financially. But here's the thing. I looked at my family life to succeed, my marriage to succeed, my finances to succeed, my friendships to succeed. So these are areas, my health, my fitness, all these areas I want to succeed in. So you want to succeed in all these areas. So, what did I do? Well, one of the first things was my wife. We were just like anybody else. And if you know us today, you might think, well, they're a great couple, and I appreciate that. But way back when, we were,
way back
oh
when.
man. So if you're familiar with the disc model, she's a high ID. She's outgoing, right? I'm the
And you're
opposite.
the opposite. Yep.
I'm a high CS. I'm passive as passive can be. As a deep. So guess what? You get this clashing. Why aren't you doing this? And I'm like, why don't you sit down for a while? Right?
Right,
Who's gonna
right.
go?
Why
And
can't we just sit here and be quiet for a while, right?
and so there's that budding that those two contrasting personality styles were butting heads, and we read books. We read several books about the disc program, and we read about personality styles, and we read about healthy marriages, and we were like, oh, so that's why you are the way you are.
Right,
That's why I'm trying to
right.
change you. And then we stopped trying to change each other, and it was like that. It
Just
really was.
love and accept each other, right? That's the thing. Just
Yeah,
accept each other
absolutely.
for where you are in this moment. And look, we all struggle sometimes. So we all need, you know, I don't like it when people say in a relationship it's a 50-50. Now, that's
Mhm.
a bunch of
No.
baloney, right?
Yeah,
It's not a
yeah,
50-50. Sometimes you're carrying 80% of the load and the other person's doing 20 or vice versa. And it's
yeah.
and it's really not even, it's 100 100.
It's like tag team.
Right.
You go to wrestling. One guy's down. All he's got to do is tag, and the other guy comes in. And he's taking over while you go rest. You go lick your wounds, whatever you got
Right.
to do. But
Right.
that's what it is. And somebody said, it's 100, and it really is. And that's with any kind of relationship where you're trying to move ahead. It
Yeah.
really is in terms of maybe commitment. You want to be 100 because you got to have each other's backs.
Absolutely. And you know what? When people say, "Oh, well, I don't want a handout. I don't, I can do this. I don't want a handout." It's not a handout, it's a hand up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think we're gonna do something a little different this episode. Last week I appreciated you guys, or last week I keep saying last week. Last episode, I appreciate everybody out there who just kind of hung in with us and watched us for an hour. But we're gonna shake it up a little bit here, and we're gonna have a surprise guest today. Right? We're
Woohoo!
gonna have a surprise guest. See if you can guess who it is. No, you can't guess. Of course, you can't guess. But surprise guest, what Steph and I decided to do was we decided to take the core value. We thought, who could we maybe bring on that really represents this core value of constant improvement? And it,
Yeah.
it actually it didn't take long, right?
No.
Didn't take long
Oh,
at all.
no. No, it didn't take long. Listen, I love when you and I get together and brainstorm because it's almost like it just oozes out of us, right? It's just like, oh, and then we get all excited. Then you say
Yeah,
something, and then I'm like, oh, wait, how about? And we do this whole thing back and forth, and I love that.
yeah, it is cool. It is
Sammy
cool.
does love
I love
surprise.
surprises. Oh, here we go, Willie Tolbert. This is
Oh,
great.
the
Okay,
sharp
wait,
dressed
it's gonna get better.
man.
It's gonna get
So
better, Willie. Thank
yeah,
you.
so if you don't know Mr. Willie Tolbert, he is amazing. He's in the Carmel chapter. He is the MC, and every time you see that man, he has an amazing bow tie on. So I call him the sharp dressed man. And he's in a
Nobody dresses like Willie. Nobody
no,
dresses like Willie. But
no,
anyway, let's bring on our surprise guest. A lot of you may know her. She is a Master Networks member. She's also a vice president of a chapter. And when I met her, I thought this girl, she knows her stuff. I mean, she's the type of person where before I installed leadership in the Mid Rockland chapter, I was looking around and I thought, who can I get to help me? Because I was doing it all myself, and I need people to help. And one of the things I knew, and maybe this was kind of a curveball for her, I was like, hey, can you take this over for me? Like in the middle of the meeting, can you talk about the tidbit?
and she does
And her
every
eyes got
time.
her eyes
She
got all
does it
wide.
every time. She's like, "Boop, no problem, I got you."
Park. Hit it out of the park. Everybody, welcome to Build It Through Culture Live. It is Rachel Sirota. Rachel,
Hi.
I'm going to turn this thing off, but because it's getting in my way. But welcome, Rachel. Appreciate you coming here.
I'm so glad to be here.
Welcome, Rachel. We're so happy to have you here.
This is so fun.
Thank you for making the time. When Steph and I were talking, we're like, we should have a surprise guest for constant improvement. We both like Rachel.
Yeah.
Like, short list.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter. We can throw it at you and be like, "Hey, Rach, can you speak to that?" You're like, "I got you," right?
That is, you talk about constant improvement. That is, and Rob knows this, but that is a skill that I have really consciously been working on. So I'm also in an organization called Toastmasters, and impromptu speaking is one of the things that we work on. And that is something that used to really intimidate me. I liked to be prepared. And over the past year or so, that is something that I have focused a lot of energy on. So I'm glad that it has come through and it has served me well in Master Networks.
And you have plenty of fans, by the way, Rachel,
Yes.
just so you know.
I'm
plenty
seeing
of
these
fans out there.
comments. Thank you guys. That's exciting.
So
That's great. So Steph has a question. Go ahead, Steph.
So, Rachel, I mean, what are you doing for constant improvement? I know, like, every week I see you, you're like holding up a book or, or quoting something from a book, right? That so and so says, and I don't want to speak for you, but How did you get into constantly thinking about improvement?
So, so it's kind of a funny story. So in my previous life, I worked in the art world in museums, and there's a lot of things I love about the museum culture, but constant improvement is actually not a part of that culture at all, at least in my experience. It is very much a culture of like, this is how we've always done it. And there's people trying to change that, but it's pretty set in its ways. Or at least it was 7+ years ago, the last time I worked in a museum. So it wasn't part of my world at all. Nobody ever talked to me about constant improvement. It's not something that came up in my art history master's program. It's not something that I learned working in the museum world. And so when I left that world and I started my business, I was doing a kind of a coaching training program. And every week we were supposed to submit like what we had done in terms of, income producing activities, like how many contacts did you make, whatever. And then there was a question about what did you read, watch, or listen to improve yourself this week? And every week I would get to that question and I'd be like, I don't know what they're talking about. Like, what does this mean? Like,
I can't even imagine that for you, honestly.
Did she freeze?
Oh, did you freeze? I think you
She
froze,
froze.
Rachel.
She froze. So we put up a couple of these things here while Rachel unfreezes. Barry Dorfman, Rachel rocks.
Yeah, Willie.
Rachel is
Rachel is a
phenomenal.
phenomenon.
She is. She is.
I don't know what
Oh,
happened.
there you are. There you
Hey,
Hey,
are.
you're back.
Okay, you're
That
back.
was the craziest thing.
In that vein, Rachel, so you started talking about what you do. So tell everybody what it is that you do before you go forward in sharing.
Yes. So you mean what I do for my business?
Yes, what you do in your business. Yeah.
So I own, cause I do a lot of things. I own a business called Forward Family Essentials, where we work with essential oils and other natural products to help people who are feeling overwhelmed create easy to follow daily routines that put them back in control. And we do it all naturally.
Awesome.
So my business is really about constant improvement, right? Like your health is something you have to be constantly improving and focusing on. And as I developed that business, I started to meet people who taught me what it was to improve yourself in other ways as well, and how you have to work on yourself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, all of those things. And they kind of all go together. And it's all part of being healthy. So that became something that I was very committed to, as much as I was committed to, eating a, vegan diet, and as much as I was committed to using natural cleaning products. It was just like, okay, well, if I'm going to really, truly, practice what I preach, I need to invest in my leadership, in my mindset, in my knowledge, in, all of these different areas as well. So it all kind of fits together.
So I know, Rachel, so you in your business you have teams that you train and develop. But the one thing that would amaze me about you, and I guess I shouldn't be amazed by it, because when I met you, I realized that you were obviously a person who was, based in that core value of constant improvement, where you really explained yourself well. You were always bringing up a book recommendation, but not everybody is like you. So, what do you find? How do you help people who aren't really on the constant improvement track? Can you help them, or are
Totally.
they a lost cause?
No, it's the same way. Again, it's the same way that you help somebody get healthier, right? It's through small changes. So, I'll suggest, like, can you literally spend 10 minutes a day listening to a podcast? 10 minutes. Maybe it's while you're, brushing your teeth and getting dressed. Just put that on in the background, right? Maybe while you're folding laundry, you can watch some kind of YouTube or, training video or something. How can you kind of fit this into your existing day without having to give anything else up? Because think about it. If we all just read 10 pages a day, right? Just 10 pages of a good book every day, that's 300 pages a month. That would be 12 books a year. So it's not
Yeah.
that's not 80 books, but if every single person was reading 12 books a year that somehow made them better, like think what that would do to our whole world. It would be amazing.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
And that's 10 pages a day. It's not a lot.
And it's not a lot. And I like that you said these kind of little micro habits that you develop, because it doesn't take a lot to make a lot of change, especially if you're looking to develop some skills that you don't have at all. So the slightest progress feels like major progress, and it's encouraging. I know when I was starting out, I didn't know either, and I wanted to change. Reading was not my favorite thing to do.
And
I
that's
was that guy
okay.
after.
That's okay,
Well,
right?
yeah,
Like not
it's
everybody learns the same.
well, here's what my mentor said. They're a little bit more a little bit more blunt with me, maybe because of my thick Italian skull. They were like, "Look, Rob, you don't have to like reading. You just got to do it."
Right.
It's like,
Right.
well, if you want this, what are you going to do to get it? Was kind of their message. If you're not going to read to improve, what are you going to do? And so, yeah, I know there's audio books, and I did that too. I would be reading a book at night. I was taught to read every night before you go to bed. But when I was in my car driving at the time, I had a job. On my commute, I listened to an audio book. So, and that's a great way for me to learn, because in reading, I fall asleep. I don't know what it is. It's like
Me
an instant
too.
sleeping pill for me. People go, I stay awake if I read. If I read
No.
and I'm a little tired, I'm not getting through one page. So
Yeah,
it's a
I'll fall
challenge
asleep
in
too.
that. But the thing about reading is it forces your brain to engage in thinking about the words and what they mean, which is why sometimes you read the same page over and over again when you're tired. But the audiobook, right, it just goes in. So it's kind of like programming the computer.
Yep.
Right?
Well, and then too, like when you're reading something, if it's really impactful, like I said, sometimes I make notes, right? Or I take a highlighter and highlight the places. And look, Rachel's going to show us a book.
I was just
now
going to say,
full
like, I
of
just
stuff.
grabbed a book, and I don't know if you can see, but there's stuff like underlines. There's
Right.
every page, there's notes. And this is
Right.
something that happened to be sitting here. Like every book, people are always like, "Oh, can I borrow that from you?" And I'm like, "Well, you can," but I scribbled all over it. So
Right.
I don't
Right.
want to.
Hey, Ken, it's my book. I got my notes in here. This is gold to me, Ken. You can, but this book's more expensive because it's got the
exactly.
notes on it.
Right. It's got all my special notes in there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But that's what's fun, is to go back, and when I read it again, I'm like, oh, why did I think that was so important last time? Like, what was I thinking about that this section stood out to me? So it's kind of fun to revisit your notes as much as to revisit the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like we were talking about earlier, sometimes maybe what you highlighted or looking at your notes, it's something that, meant something to you then, but to now you think it's common knowledge. Well, doesn't everybody know that? But maybe there's something else in the book, which is why we say go back and reread the same book sometimes, because you really don't get the full message of the book. You don't get the full value out of the book by reading it once, because largely your mind is wandering, right? You're reading,
Yep.
you catch a thought, the thought takes you somewhere, but you continue reading sometimes, so you're not really engaged in the message, and you may lose it, which is why rereading is really important. So Chaz said in the workshop, which I thought was a great take on it, because I was the guy who needed to read a lot of books. So I remember telling my wife, I was like, I need to make sweeping changes, and I need to do it fast. So I'm like, I'm going to read a book a week for a year, and what like nobody does practically. And I did it, and it was great, but it was an accomplishment, and I did learn a lot, but I didn't get as much out of each book as if I just kind of studied the book, right? So to get the full message.
And you know what, Rob? In some of these books, I find too, and I talk to my son Dylan about it too, because he's reading something right now, and he's typically a real quick reader. And I said, "You're really taking a long time to read that book, huh?" And he said, Mom, some of these books," and he's right, because I had to agree with him. He said, when you read it, you need to read it in smaller increments to digest it and let it really resonate. Right?
True.
Like I want to take all of the information and I want to make sure that I'm storing it where it needs to be and
Mhm.
not just glazing over it to say, oh, yeah, I read the book.
Yeah.
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 So like
Well,
Tina says here, on that note, imagine if you teach your children to keep reading throughout their lives. I
Yeah.
started at,
yeah.
in my 20s. What if I had that reading habit? Because I met people that, they read um, Master Key to Riches when they were 10 or Rich Dad Poor Dad when they were 11. And I'm like, I wish I
That
had
somebody
some
had
kind of
given you
desire to
that.
do that.
Yeah, yeah.
If they had given
Or
it to me and
even
if I
that
had to
someone
read it
gave
too.
it to you and said, hey, or you see, I think kids tend to pick up things that they see, right? So if you leave books laying around, if somebody was to leave those kinds of books, I used to go to my grandmother's house and she would have she had a little like bookshelf in her bathroom that she would leave, and not just like, silly, goofy.
What kind of books in the bathroom?
I'm just telling you,
There's
some
those off
people, but
color books in the bathroom that I've been to.
but they weren't that's what I'm saying. They weren't just those off-color, goofy joke books, right? It was, you know, again, it's there to provoke some kind of thought like, "Hey, maybe I'll grab that," right? Or,
Mhm.
I think when it's normal and your kids see
Yeah.
that, then it becomes an automatic thing. They see you do it, they wanna emulate you, right?
Yeah.
Especially the younger they are, the more they wanna emulate, right? So
So Rachel, you have little kids.
Yeah.
I mean, and the kids can be challenging, right? Because they don't do what you want them to do necessarily. But are your kids learners? Are they like you? Have you've been able to pass that on?
Yeah, they are. My older son, who's 10, is a huge reader. Not, I mean, I haven't handed him like Brene Brown quite yet, but he plows through books. I swear Amazon has taken so much of my money in the past 2 years because I buy him like a box set that's like 2,000 pages of, text, and he reads it in a week. So, yeah, so he's definitely a reader. My younger two are in second grade, and so they're just at that age where their reading ability is kind of catching up with their comprehension. So they're starting to read longer books and getting into text. My daughter really loves reading about people around the world. There's this great series called I See the Sun In, and it's different countries. So I see the sun in Mexico, I see the sun in Botswana, I see the sun in Nepal. And each book is like a day in the life of a kid in that country. And my daughter loves them. And she loves coming to tell me, like, Mommy, did you know kids in Botswana also have to do a lot of the things we have to do here? And like, she's 7 and she's telling me about kids in Botswana. That's so cool.
that
But
is cool.
she just eats it up. She just loves kind of consuming information. My husband and I will say, like, she gets her teacher voice when, she's telling me last night about descriptive language and how this book really painted a picture. And I'm like, how old are you? Like,
Right.
but it's
That
great.
depends on the kid too, and not
Yeah.
all kids are like that too.
Yeah.
But
But
we have a
it's,
couple of minutes left with Rachel, and I want to ask you another question because
yeah.
here's one of the things that I noticed. So the first part of constant improvement is improve the self, but there comes a time where yes, you can do that, but as we said earlier, when you're given something, it doesn't really have the value that it could create until you give it away. So tell us what you do as far as I know you were teaching people, and what do you get out of that when you're looking to improve yourself?
I mean, so much. Like, even before I came to Master Networks, I always said learning and teaching were two of my core values. And it's so much of the through line through my entire, I won't even say adult life, like teenage and on life has been about learning and teaching. And I really see them like, hey, you can't do one without the other, really, because you haven't really learned something until you've taught it to somebody else. You haven't really internalized it until you can articulate it and explain it. And so that can happen in small conversations or on a speaking on a large stage and everywhere in between. So that is, when I worked in museums, I worked in the education department. there's no, it's not an accident that I actually left a PhD program because I felt like it was too insular and I was just talking to like other academics and I wanted to talk to a broader audience. So I walked away from my PhD program to go work in museums because I wanted to talk to people. And if I was just sitting in a library, nobody cared. Yeah. Like, so I could write an article and it would get published in a journal that had like 7 readers. So I didn't want to do that. I even, you think like, oh, working in museums and teaching about health and wellness are so completely different, but the through line between all of it is the teaching and learning.
Yeah. I mean, I did hear that it's the teacher who learns more than the student, because when you have to express it to somebody, to communicate it in a clear way so they get it, you yourself start to understand it a little deeper, because it's one thing to know the information. It's completely another thing to communicate that information in an effective way that somebody gets it, right?
It's, when I was in the education department, we used a model called inquiry-based teaching. So if you go on a tour of the Guggenheim Museum, your tour guide isn't going to just rattle off a prepared speech. They're actually going to engage you in conversations and ask questions. And it's something that we spend a lot of time training on. And those skills are something that I have taken with me. So my team now is like, oh man, like Rachel will just ask a question and then sit there patiently in silence until we answer it, right? And that, I think, that's such a powerful thing to be able to do, because it's one thing to just be able to like regurgitate information. Like, sure, I'll tell you everything that Simon Sinek wrote and start with why. Like, okay, who cares? But it's so much more powerful to be able to take that and ask questions that help people think and reflect and come to conclusions that are meaningful on their own.
Boom. There you go. Rachel, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming on, Rachel, as our first surprise guest. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you, Rachel.
I'll come anytime. This is so fun.
We love you. And I just want you to know that we really appreciate all that you do in our region and for your chapter. So we're blessed to have you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, hon. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Have a great night.
So there you go. So Rachel is a great example of that constant improvement. And we could probably really get so much more out of hearing her approach, because every time I talk with her, and that's one of those relationships, back to relationships, that I developed through her joining one of my chapters. But we started talking outside of it, because we'd end up staying past the meeting, talking about something. She would bring up a book. I'd be like, oh, I remember reading that. And this is my favorite. So, that relationship,
it's
now,
the banter, right?
Talk every week. Yeah.
And
she and I talk every week.
Yeah. And again, because it makes you feel good, right? Because you get stuff out of it. Like, there's so many golden nuggets. We talk about this all the time, but it always goes back to how we make each other feel and how we support each other.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we got great support here. Mass Networks is uber supportive. We get lots of support from everybody in here. Here's Jeff Levin. So he's the president of the Mid-Rockland chapter. I don't think anybody appreciates all that Rachel does for our chapter more than I do. Thanks for being awesome. Yeah, it's a team, and they're great team members in that. So we're going to wind this down pretty shortly, but I know you had asked a question earlier. Maybe we want to go to some of those answers. People,
what are you guys all doing for constant improvement? Share again what you do, or let's look up. But if you're doing something for improvement, and sometimes it's just you're having conversations with people you can be learning from, right? That's anything that is helping you to improve.
Yeah. So Lola says, restructuring my time management to give myself time to read the stack of books collected. Anybody get a stack?
Yeah. I think we all have one of those stacks, right?
Lola, don't feel bad. I've done that plenty of times, and I actually haven't been reading a lot. This year I haven't read as much, but again, there are methods of learning. So I am watching videos. I am reading things that come into my inbox, taking stuff in chunks and nuggets. And there are
Yeah.
certain books that I do want to read. Watching videos too. One of the things that I saw Tina Campbell put up here earlier about the Master Networks University. So watch videos. I love
And
videos.
there are a ton of them. Go into the hub. And if you don't know how to use the hub, reach out to one of us. We'll walk you through it. There's so much great stuff back there for you. These are, Rob and I talk about this. Master Networks gives you so much opportunity, not just, for your growth, right? Not just business, for growth in your business, how to approach things. You know, you're
Yeah, absolutely.
you're selling yourself short if you're not going back there and checking out the hub and getting as much information as you can. Tina.
Also,
Yep.
also from Tina, her daughter and fiance have attended Connect every year. So, an annual conference put out by Master Networks. They've gotten so much out of attending connections, learning, and confidence. Let me tell you something. A lot of people be like, "Oh, wait, I gotta buy a ticket. How much is that ticket? Wait, for how many days? I gotta be. Wait, I gotta drive. 15 hours, 20 hours. I gotta fly. What now? I used to be that person that make all those kind of comments about the cost, but what is the value I reap out of something like that? I mean, once I really learned it, I would drive 5 hours for one day, 2 days. I would drive 20 hours for a weekend.
Right.
I've done those things. So this year was down at Connect in Dallas, and I went down to Connect, to get an annual conference. And so part of this the constant improvement. So to go over it again, right? Books. We talked a lot about books.
Yep.
We talked about
Videos.
audio,
Yep.
video,
Audio, video. Uh,
conferences.
Rachel said Toastmasters. There were several people in the
Yeah,
chat shouting out Toastmasters just so that you could speak, right? Like, so that you were comfortable speaking impromptu in a crowd,
yeah.
whatever you're doing, just share it with somebody else, right?
Yeah. And it really takes an active um, mindset to do that. We understand. So it takes, I've got to actively do that. So Rachel had invited me to her Toastmasters meeting this past Monday. I'd never been before. And I was highly impressed at how they really break down every aspect of speaking, how to do it effectively, how to do it engagingly. And she was by far and away, not just because she's a good friend of mine, but she was far away the best in the room. I have to
Yes.
say, because
So
she did a
I'm
standalone speech. It was great.
I'm going to shout out Sammy too. Sammy has been in Toastmasters for quite a while. For as long as I've known her, she's been in Toastmasters. And she says, she's a distinguished Toastmaster. And
Yeah,
anybody that's heard Sammy speak, she does a beautiful job, right?
she does. She speaks really well. Hey, I thought it was just natural, but look, here's another person who spent money, spent time to get better, to constantly improve, and it never ends. It never ever ends, right?
No, it doesn't.
So we just have a minute or two. We're going to wind this down. So this was the second episode of Build It Through Culture Live. Hope you enjoyed it. We conquered the second core value of improvement or constant improvement.
Constant
But
improvement.
I want to shout out. So we're going to be back in 2 weeks. So that is December 2nd. We're going to have episode 3, December 2nd, 2021. And that third core value is, if anybody knows it, you can just shout it out in the
Yeah,
go
let's
ahead.
make them
Say-
shout it out. Don't say it. Don't say
Oh,
it.
let's say
Let's
it,
see
yeah.
who shouts
Let's
it
see if you
out.
knew. It is the
What's
third one.
the third
The
core
third one.
value? The
So
third
in
one.
order.
Put it into the chat. What's the third core value?
Let's see if they get it. Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. I'm seeing
Nothing
other
yet.
stuff, but nothing yet. Come on. Who knows the third core value?
Oh, Tina.
Tina,
Forget,
of
we can't let
course.
Tina do it. Of course, Tina knows it.
You
She
got to let
created
other
them.
people do it, Tina.
You created them. Okay, we got to wind down. So it is contribution. That will be the next episode 3. Like I said, on December 2nd, contribution. And Steph, maybe you want to give it some shout outs, some thank yous to some people. You want to take
Yeah,
that
you
part?
know what? I want to give a great big shout out tonight to the CEO of Master Networks, Mr. Chaz Wilson, for really, really, it was such an honor to be part of the training, the 5+1 training today that he gave to our region. So a big, huge shout out to Chaz. Of course, to the queen of culture, our New York, Connecticut regional partner, the beautiful Miss Tina Campbell, because without her, you and I wouldn't be here right now, right? You and I
Yeah,
wouldn't be having
absolutely.
this conversation. I would not know you. So, and thank you to everyone who's listening, because without you guys participating and being part of this, that's what's going to make this what Rob and I hope and intended to be for all of you, that we
Yeah.
all get to continuously, right? Constantly improve with each other by you sharing some of your experiences with us and us sharing with you. That's what we're here
Yeah.
for. So,
And I want to give a special shout out to Renee Pride, regional partner Renee Pride, who, by the way, I met in person at Connect. Just weekly click too. I love Renee, and it was her idea to take this program and boost it up to the Master Networks Inc. page. So that's the national page, and I really appreciate her for helping to raise this awareness of this to get out to more people. She saw value in what we're doing here, and I really appreciate that. So thank you, Renee.
yes, thank
Um,
you, Renee. Woo woo.
yeah, definitely, definitely.
And
And the whole audience, we hope you really enjoyed this. Hope you got some value out of it. And we love when you put the comments in there. We love bringing you on. Special thank you to Rachel Sirota, our surprise guest. And we will be back, like I said, on December 2nd. And
yes.
Steph, final thoughts, Steph. Go ahead.
Final thoughts are, oh my God, just be kind, spread love. This is the week, the upcoming week of Thanksgiving. Think of all of the things that you have to be thankful and grateful for, and wake up every morning with gratitude, right? And think of at least three things that you're grateful for. We love you guys, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. See you guys in a couple of weeks. Have a good night.
Good night.